All right, everyone, I have been sitting on this footage for a while. Before I left Boston, I had the chance to sit down with some of the Boston Game Makers Guild peeps. This was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 days before I left. So this was back in May. It gave me the opportunity to try something new with building, where I sat down and did some interviews with a few of the people from Boston Game Makers Guild. And one of the things that we talked about was, why is it important to join a game design group? So I hope you enjoy this.
I'm Chris Anderson. I am a member of leadership for Game Makers Guild. I also run the Board Game Workshop, podcast, and design contest, which takes up so much of my design time. And I'm a designer. Did Invino Morte, which is kind of popular, and other games which are less popular.
My name is Dennis Chan. I've been in GMG since 2012. I'm the designer for Beyond the Sun, which is currently the hotness on Board Game Geek, so I'm very happy. And GMG definitely influenced me a lot and helped me a lot in every step of the way. So I'm very, very grateful of this community and just having the group and knowing the people and having playtesters.
My name is Jeff Johnston. I'm here in the Boston area, and I'm a member of the Boston meetup group, the Game Makers Guild.
My name is Tim Blank. I am primarily a game designer, but I do a number of different things in the board game industry. I am currently the president of the Game Makers Guild. We normally meet in person, but during the pandemic, we have transitioned to online, but hopefully soon we'll be back to being in person. I also am vice president and a board member for Boston Fig. We are the largest indie game festival in the world. We happen every year, usually in September, and we bring together designers and players from all around the world to come together and check out indie games. Additionally, I also teach game design at Northeastern University.
You know, I've often thought about, why should you join a game design group? And, first and foremost is you're going to find a group of people that are just going to share the misery of designing games together, right? I mean, you're going to find a whole bunch of shoulders to cry on because, it's really fun when you have a sweet game and the mechanics are working and everybody's there, but it usually takes quite a bit of time before you find that moment in your game. Setting that aside, it really is very difficult for most of us to design a game alone. And although we often start alone, your game just gets so much better when people are contributing ideas into your process and helping you ferret through things, helping you break through design walls when you're stuck.
So game design groups are integral to designing games because you cannot do it in a vacuum. Even a solo game, you need to show it to someone else to get the input of another person. If your goal is to design games only for yourself, then you don't need a group. If your goal is to design a game for literally any other person, you need an other person. And a design group is filled with other persons. So it's a great place to find them. Random other persons are not as into testing games as game design groups. So they are the perfect group to test games with.
You're too funny.
Yeah, so I can speak from a shy person's perspective. I've been in Game Makers Guild for a long time, and I did not bring anything because I didn't know anything about game design. The great thing about this community, at least, I don't know about others, is you can just go. You can watch and you can play. There's no pressure to bring anything. And this is great for people who are just kind of interested, not sure, just want to know what it is about. You just go and you play other people's games. And eventually, over time, you'll see a lot of good games, you'll see a lot of bad games. And the triggering moment for me is I played a bad game. I had a good idea for it, but that person didn't take it. That person just said, I'm going to do it my way. And then I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it my way to improve on your game. So it's great for things to organically happen, and that's how I got slowly into board game design.
The importance of game design groups really lives in all of these theories that we have about communities. When communities work together, they are going to go much further than individuals working on their own. I've experienced this personally. When I first started game design, I was doing it on my own, just meeting with some of my friends who aren't design-minded, and my games were only getting so far. But as soon as I joined Game Makers Guild, I started getting in touch with other designers and really getting a critical look at my games.
How do design groups make your games better?
Bringing your game to a bunch of other designers and putting it on the table is going to help make your game better. I can count in almost every design I've created, one of the most fun aspects of the game did not come from my head. It came from another designer giving me an idea that either was the fun thing, or was that one thought that connected with the two other problems I had in the back of my head, and that's what let it move forward. So that is definitely one of the biggest reasons why you might want to bring your game to fellow designers and play with them.
For me as a game design educator, I think it's really important that a lot of individuals get their eyes on your game, that you get to look at this game through multiple lenses. And by looking at it through multiple lenses, you're going to learn more about your game, and you're going to learn how to make your game better. So by bringing it to game design groups, you're going to be putting your game in front of people, and hopefully people who have different frames and different lenses than you do. So that way you can get some new ideas about your game, and that's just going to help spark you to be a lot more creative.
A rulebook playtest, or more conventionally a blind playtest, was one of the key moments for my game too, because in my experience Beyond the Sun, one of the reasons why it was signed by Rio Grande Games is they really liked the rulebook. They said it's one of the most organized ones out there, and that was because I had a blind play test and they pointed out all the wordings that wasn't clear. And you don't get that in every game design group. Sometimes you just throw things together and you just play and play and play, but this is more structured and it's only about the rulebook. So I encourage any design group to have different aspects of the game that should be tested.
So what do you get from a game design group outside of the playtesting?
Outside of playtesting?
Yeah.
There's other stuff?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a group of like-minded people, generally, to a degree. I mean, everyone's a little different. But it's nice to talk to people that have similar interests. Like you and I have talked about philosophy and the meaning behind games for far too long. Yeah, I mean, GMG is great. Like, most of my friends are in GMG. Like, that is how I've met people. I don't hang out with anyone I knew before game design. Like, it's a different life. It's so strange to me. But, yeah, I mean, design groups are great. Designers are great. The gamer community is, for the most part, very nice people. The game design community, I would say, is generally even nicer. It's usually a great group of people that just fun to hang out with. Like, we haven't play tested a game at all tonight, and this is an enjoyable evening.
There's obviously a social aspect and camaraderie, and you make friends. In the game design world, it's really important that you are getting out there and you're going to events and you are meeting people, you're meeting publishers, you're meeting your audience, you're meeting your target market, and getting your game in front of as many people as you can. And you learn about these opportunities, and in these communities you also get together with others and you travel together and cost share on hotels and all of that. And so being a part of a community that does that is just going to be beneficial.
Outside playtesting, what draws me to going to the group is seeing the same game evolve over time. There's a game called Calligraphy where at the beginning, I played it many, many times, and every time there's a little bit changed, and it's just really cool to see things added over time and it gets polished. And even though it's not my game, it's good to just kind of go back once in a while and see what's happening. That brings me joy, even though it's not directly playtesting my own game.
Being a member of a group like this really brings a lot of joy and satisfaction to me personally, because whenever I'm frustrated with, say, my own designs and they're just not moving forward or anything like that, I can just come to a meeting, set all of my problems aside, and just help someone else out. And, that in and of itself is just a very, a fun part of what I enjoy about being a member of the Game Makers Guild, is giving back.
Now, you all have been in a game design group in some capacity for several years at this point. What's the biggest thing you've learned during that time?
The past 5 years in GMG have taught me that it's really okay to put yourself out there, especially with game design. I have brought absolute trash to GMG meetings. I have made games that some people say are perfect. They say, this is it, this is the game, this is the version, this is great, it's done. And I say, okay, I'm gonna change it, and I flip everything around and I bring it back and they say, this is trash, you ruined everything, why is this bad? And then I flip it again and bring it back and they like it even more.
I guess the lesson that's stuck with me most that I've learned is really around the area of less is more. And, getting to the heart of the fun, what is the fun core of your game, and stripping everything else as much as you can away from that is what I've gotten much better at as a designer through my experience with the GMG. And if I ever forget that lesson, there's plenty of my playtester buddies that are quick to remind me.
I would say the most important lesson is to keep going, even though you don't have anything to bring or you don't have any new ideas. The fact that you are playtesting can generate ideas. For example, my game Beyond the Sun, I left it for 2 years without just gathering dust. But I kept going anyway. I think I stopped for a while, but I kept coming back and then getting back into the flow of things. And then eventually I brought it and it just picked up again. If I may add another lesson, which is validation is very important. Actually, Ben and you and Sam, you're the 3 people that actively liked my game and that propelled it forward, because there's a lot of uncertainty in design, because it's a creative pursuit and you don't know whether you're doing the right thing. So you need people to say that that's good, or validate some form of validation.
If you had to pick something about the Boston Game Makers Guild that you think they do exceptionally well, that you would like to see shared with the rest of the design community, what would that be?
The Game Makers Guild has a very a rigorous and well-defined curation process that helps a designer bring their concept to what could be a highly matured state. And it's very useful, I find, with the newer designers that come to the group. So this kind of structure that we talk about every single playtest is very approachable. It's very useful to the designer, and so we'll bring a game through initial playtesting where people get comfortable and think it's a good enough foundation to keep moving forward. Then we bring it into a session where we play it in depth for several hours, and we dedicate the resources of the Game Makers Guild to help that design and that designer work specifically on their game above anything else that we're doing as a group. And then we bring it through, give them an opportunity to have blind playtesting, or as we like to say now, out-of-the-box playtesting. And then we have a final step where a group of people that we think are really interested in that kind of mechanic and that flavor of games will look through the game one last time and give that designer more feedback. So that sort of rigor around a curation process is something that I think is really something that other playtest groups might want to learn about and see if it fits with them.
So I'm going to answer this with a caveat, which is I haven't been to many other design groups in person, especially. But what I really liked about GMG that is probably pretty unique is it's tied to Boston Festival of Indie Games, because besides validation, it's also very important to have accountability. It's like school. You have a deadline of June submission for September festival. You have to make that final push for, even if it's just a design, like an indie game convention, it's not a real publisher. You have to push it to make sure you have everything presentable. That push is very important. And not every game group has that. But having a yearly deadline almost makes it more exciting, and it creates waves of work that will propel your game forward.
I'd say the biggest thing that Game Makers Guild does that I don't see in a lot of other design groups is just the regularity with which we meet. We meet once every other week, and I know the Philadelphia one meets that often as well. The New Haven one actually meets once every week. And that gives designers a timeline, and it says every 2 weeks you need to have a new iteration for your game. And I know for me as a designer, that almost is a deadline, and so I know that I have to create the newest iteration of my game within the next 2 weeks, and that really pushes me and pushes my designs forward. So one of my biggest pieces of advice to individuals who are looking to start a game group is really to just be consistent. Pick a cadence at which you're going to meet and just keep doing it. And yes, maybe at first you're only going to have a couple of people, 3, 4 people, but as you continue to stay consistent, you're going to eventually see more people coming on board. And when they know what to expect and how often they can participate in your group, that's really what's going to keep them coming back, because they don't have to wonder if your group is meeting this week, they know.
So what GMG is exceptional at with their particular structure is structure. From what I hear of all the other game design groups, and I've been in a few, I sort of help run one. We are not organized. People show up, we hang out, like, who wants to play a game? Oh, I've got a game, and we put it down, and we get things done. But GMG, you sign up ahead of time, you bring in your game, Tim pairs them up, so we kind of balance for time and player count, and it's very organized. And I think we get much quicker feedback, let's put it that way. So we do, they're 2.5 hour meetings normally when we're in person. So in 2.5 hours, we get all the games tested. With other stuff, like our Norton group, we'll maybe get 5 or 6 things tested over 5 hours, which is still fun, and I enjoy that. And I think that group is perfectly good reason to have a group and play games. But I think GMG does it super efficiently, and we're also great at playtesting for publishers. So if you're a publisher and you want to give us some games, that's for you, Tim.
So I hope you enjoyed that video or got some kind of value out of it. This is something I sort of dropped the ball on. My intention when I started this trip was to do something like this for every community I encountered. I just got too tired. It was such like physical and mental effort to just break out the video equipment when I was so drained that I didn't do this everywhere. But I did do it in a few places, and I'm gonna get to that footage soon, and I'm gonna show it to you, and hopefully you'll get some value out of that too. So thanks for watching, and happy gaming. Peace.
I've found a lot of friends, where we've met at the prototyping table to kind of work together, but then it's very easy to go and play with those same people outside the group.
Designing games is great. It's just a fun exercise. And then the scoring is showing it to another person, and they tell you how wrong you are. And then you try again to beat your score. And eventually you publish it. And then lots of people tell you you're wrong.
And I'm a huge fan of GIFs.